No, it's that.
It's funny.
You got
Okay.
that not like this.
Yesterday, we started talking about some bad choices that David made, didn't we? And we talked about how the Bible calls him a man after God's own heart. And Josie, what did that mean? David was a man after God's own heart. What did that mean?
He believed in God.
Believed in God. What else, Connor?
He trusted God.
Trusted God. Mason.
He would only believe in God.
What else, Karen?
He loves God.
Loves God.
He obeys God's word and obeys Him.
That's right. Because he loves God, because he trusts God, because he reads God's word, and he wants to obey Him. He wants to do the right thing, right? But even when we all want to do the right thing, we still mess up, don't we? We still sin. We still make bad choices. And so we're talking this week. Yes.
I need to go to the bathroom back.
Why did you just not wait to ask?
Because I had to go.
You should have asked before now. Hurry up. And we also talked about how at the beginning yesterday, David was king. Things were going well. If he went to war, he won. And all the people loved him, and he was popular. And we talked about how sometimes when things are really easy and things are going really well, it's easy for us to let our guard down. And it's easy for us to not depend on God as much as we do when things are hard, right? And so when that was going on, David kind of started making, might not have seemed like a big deal, but what was the first bad choice he made?
More
Allison?
than one wife.
He married more than one woman. Why was that a bad choice, Tenny?
Because God said you only marry one wife.
That's right. And so he started doing things that the other kings around him, the other cultures around him did. But the difference between the people of Israel and the difference between the countries around them is the people of Israel, they were God's chosen people, weren't they? They were supposed to do things God's way. So when David started doing things the way other countries did, that wasn't okay, was it?
No.
Now, could he have stopped right here
Yes.
and said, Lord, I messed up. I'm making wrong choices. Help me make better choices. But did he?
No.
No. So then we talked about, remember I read that verse that said, in the springtime when kings go off to war, David sent Joab and the troops, but he stayed in Jerusalem, didn't he? So the second thing that he did wrong was he wasn't doing his job, was he? He sent somebody else to do his job. And because he wasn't where he was supposed to be and he was out on the roof one night, Carrie, you can go at the door. He saw Bathsheba taking a bath and he thought she was really pretty and he thought, I want to spend some time with her. What was wrong with that choice?
Greedy.
It was greedy. Why was it greedy?
Because he was taking something that wasn't his.
That's right. Bathsheba was married to Uriah, right? So she was already somebody else's wife. And David already had more than one wife, right?
How many?
I don't know at this point how many. But he had more than one wife already, and Bathsheba was married, so it was not okay. He was being greedy. He wanted somebody else's wife. And so that was a bad choice. And he spent time with her, and then she sent word that she was going to have a baby, and then he thought, oh no, I can't let anybody know what happened. So he was trying to cover up his sin, and what did he do?
He had Uriah get at the very front of
Not yet. What was the first thing he tried? He tried to do
sent
something
Uriah
first.
to the palace.
he called for Uriah. And remember, he tried to get Uriah to go home and spend time with Bathsheba. But instead of spending time with his wife at home, what did he do?
Swipe at the gate.
He slept at the king's gate because he said, you know what? All the soldiers and Joab, they're out in tents. How can I go home and sleep in my bed and be with my family when all the other soldiers are out in tents? I can't do that. So then David tried again. And this time, remember, he got Uriah to drink a lot, and he thought, well, if he gets drunk, then he won't be thinking clearly, and then he'll go home. But did he? No, he slept at the king's gate again. So instead of stopping and thinking, you know what, this is not working, I need to be honest, I need to confess my sin, I need to quit making bad choices, what did David do?
Have Uriah at the front.
Do what?
Try one more time.
What was he going to do this time?
He was going to put Uriah at the very front of the line with nobody else.
That's right. He sent a letter to Joab saying, you put Uriah at the very front where the fighting is the worst and call back all the troops so he'll be by himself and then he'll get killed. So he's thinking, if Uriah dies, then my sin will be covered up. Nobody will find out. And so that's where we left it yesterday. And who carried the letter to Joab? Uriah did. Uriah carried the letter that was commanding for him to basically be killed, right? Not making good choices, is he? And it's this one bad choice makes it easier to make another bad choice, which makes it easier.
Another.
And remember, we talked about we could stop, and he could have stopped at any point in time and said, Lord, I am sorry. Tessa, go get the door, please. And he was saying he could have asked God to forgive him, and God would have. Put your stuff up and sit down. Listen, focus. We're back. He could have stopped anywhere in here because you know what God's word says? It says if we confess our sins, if we tell God, I messed up, what I did was wrong, and I'm sorry, will you please forgive me? The Bible says he is faithful to forgive us of our sins. So anytime we ask and we are really sorry that we made a wrong choice and we don't want to do it again, God, he wants to forgive us. He wants us to make right choices. But has David done that yet?
No.
He just keeps on and keeps on. And so Uriah took the letter to Joab. And Joab gets the letter. And he did what David said. He put Uriah in the very front, where the fighting was the worst, was the fiercest. And then he told all the men to step back, and that left Uriah alone. And guess what happened?
He died.
And Uriah was killed. And so then Joab sent a messenger to tell King David what all had happened in the battle. And he said in the report, your servant Uriah has been killed. So how should David have felt when he heard that?
Sad.
He should have been sad. He should have thought, oh no, what have I done? But guess what?
God. Yes.
He was pleased. And he thought, whew, now nobody's going to find out what I did. Now I can marry Bathsheba and she can come live with me and nobody will ever know. And who did we say yesterday? Even if nobody else that we know of finds out, who still knows? God knows, and that's what counts, right? And so David was pleased, and he thought, oh, I can marry Bathsheba, and nobody will know. And not only had David done all this stuff, but now instead of trying to have Uriah killed, he did have Uriah killed. And what's that called when you have somebody killed? It's a sin, it's murder. So not only has all that happened, but now it's got even worse. Because David chose to sin and he didn't stop and ask God to help him make right choices. Now somebody has died. And that somebody was Bathsheba's husband. So how do you think Bathsheba feels when she hears that her husband has died? There's lots of people that are being affected by David's choices, right? Honor, sit on your pockets, please. And so, do what?
Does Bathsheba know that David made that plan?
I don't know. I don't know if she realizes that that's what happened.
How did he get killed?
What did David say to have Uriah do?
Oh, I remember.
Okay. And so later on, remember I told you David wrote some songs, and after he was sorry for his sin, he wrote lots of things. And later on, he wrote, "When I tried to hide my sin, I felt sick every day." How many of you, when you have made a wrong choice, even though you're kind of sort of glad nobody's found out yet, but you still feel yucky inside? You ever done that before? Okay.
No.
That's God's Holy Spirit trying to tell you you're making wrong choices and you need to ask for forgiveness and you need to ask God to help you make right choices. So even though it looked like, even though it looked like David was getting away with it, and even though he thought nobody else knew, he still knew and God still knew, and he felt really yucky about it because he knew it was not a good thing. And he knew he had made some wrong choices. Okay? And so, it might not be that you've done something as big as David did when having somebody killed, but you know, if you say something that's not the truth, that's still a sin, isn't it? If you look at somebody else's paper and use their answers, that's still a sin, isn't it? If you say an unkind word to someone, that's still a sin, isn't it? And God hears everything we say, He sees everything that we do, and He wants us to make right choices, okay? Now, like we said, one bad choice
Can
make another, and all along. So when Bathsheba got the message that her husband Uriah had been killed, she was very sad and she mourned for him. And after that was over, back then they would mourn, they would be sad for a certain amount of time. And so after that time was over, David married her. So he's back to, there's another wife, right? Because he's still thinking he can cover up his sin. And so time went by and Bathsheba had a baby boy and everything seemed to be working out. David, even though he felt yucky inside, he thought, you know what? Nobody else has found out. I covered up my sin. Nobody found out that I did something really wrong. But the whole time, like I said, he kind of felt yucky about it. And God gave David time to stop and to think, you know what? I need to ask God to forgive me. And David kept on and kept on. He just kept trying to act like it never happened. And God gave him some time. And God was waiting for David. Now, was God pleased with David's choices?
No.
He wasn't, was he? Did that mean that God didn't love David anymore?
No.
God still loved David very much, but he was not happy with David's choices, was he? And so since David didn't confess his sin or admit that he had done wrong, God decided it was time to take care of it. And so God was going to judge David. That means he was going to take care of it and make some consequences for David. And so God sent the prophet Nathan to see David. Now, what is a prophet?
A priest. Oh wait, one of
Think about it. Think about it. What does a prophet do? Samuel was a prophet. Nathan was a prophet. Isaiah and Jeremiah, they were all prophets. Mason, what did prophets do?
they like worshiped God and like helped people and like made people things.
Okay, they did some of those things, but what's the main job of a prophet, Josie?
They teach people about God.
Okay, they would get a word from God.
They were like pastors.
Kind of. They would get a word from God, and then they would tell the people, this is what God says. This is what God wants you to do. Okay? So, he sends Nathan the prophet to see David. And when Nathan comes to see David, he decides he's going to tell David a story. And so he starts talking about this story about this really rich man that has all these sheep. I mean, lots and lots of sheep, plenty of them. And this rich man had a servant, or there was this poor man who, his family all had one little lamb. Now the rich man has lots. The poor man has just one. And the poor man's family, they loved that little lamb. It was more like a pet and part of their family. Well, the rich man had company one day, and he decided that he was going to kill a lamb and cook it and have it cooked and stuff. So instead of taking one of all of his sheep, guess what?
What?
He took the one sheep from the poor man.
Whoa.
So this is a story that Nathan is telling David, and as David's hearing this story, David got furious. And he said, as the Lord lives, that man who's done that should die, because he took that one little lamb of that poor man. Now think about the story. There was a rich man that had lots of lambs. A poor man had just one. Does that sound like anything else that's been going on?
Yes.
Carter?
David had more than one wife, and Uriah had one.
Mm-hmm. And what did David do?
He took
He wanted Uriah's wife, right? So who is David like in the story that Nathan was telling?
the rich man.
The rich man. So David, he's not thinking, and he's not catching on to what Nathan's doing yet. And so he's so mad, and he's saying that guy that did that should be punished. And you know what Nathan did? Nathan looked at David and he said, David, you are that man.
The rich man?
David was being just like that rich man, wasn't he? Because instead of sheep, he had more than one wife, and he was wanting Uriah's wife for his own, and instead of doing what he was supposed to do. And he did all this stuff. And like we said, if you think about it, I think that David had about a year. God gave him about a year to confess his sin and to tell God he was sorry and to make things right, and David didn't. And that's when David sent Nathan the prophet to talk to him. And we'll find out David's reaction when Nathan talked to him and said, David, you're just like that rich man. Okay? And so let's practice our verse. Who knows where it is?
Psalms.
Psalm 51:10. Okay, so that. Psalm 51:10. God, create a clean heart for me. You say that.
God, create a clean heart for me,
And renew a steadfast spirit within me.
and renew a steadfast spirit within me.
Okay, let's say all that together. Psalm 51:10. God, create a clean heart